of bed. Nobody knows what lies ahead. Life is short, to say the least. We're in the belly of the beast. Be still, wild and young. Long may your innocence reign like shells on the shore, and may your limits be unknown, and may your efforts be your own. And if you feel like you can't take it anymore, don't break character. You got so much heart. Is this real or just a dream? Rise up like the sun, labor till the work is done. Be still, one day you'll leave. Feel this on your sleeve. When you come back, tell me, what did you see? Was there something there for me? Be still, close your eyes. Soon enough you'll be on your own, steady and straight. And if they drag you through the mud, it doesn't change or stain your blood. Don't break character. Got a lot of heart. Is this real or just a dream? Be still. Be still. Be still. Be still. Over rock and shore, over sunset rain, over traffic sand. If you're in too deep, in your wildest dreams, in your made-up schemes, when they knock you down, when they knock you down, don't break character. You got so much heart. Is this real or just a dream? Rise up like the sun, labor till the work is done. Rise up like the sun, labor till the work is. Rise up like the sun, labor till the work is done.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Man, I just want to welcome you, whether you're here in the seats or watching online. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are in our third week of Living the Dream series, and today we're talking about looking for the leak. And what that means is sometimes when we're headed on our journey or headed to a destination, sometimes there's things that start to fade or small little leaks, whether it's our energy depleting or our motivation. And sometimes we ignore that and still head to our goal. But the truth of the matter is, if we don't pay attention to that and fix that leak right away, that big leak can turn into something big and detrimental when we get to the end and hinder us from reaching our destination. And that's why we sing that first song. That first song talks about laboring until the work is done, being consistent through the entire journey so that you can make it to your destination. Well, my name is Aaron Jones. I'm the worship arts director here at the Clinton Township campus, and I get to share a lot of exciting things that are happening within our community. And one of the first things is our virtual live event that's happening tomorrow night. And maybe you've been sitting here in this series and been wondering, what are the dreams that God has placed in me? What is my purpose? Well, this event is for you. It's a virtual event that you can do from your home at 7 p.m. You can log on and really dive deeper into your relationship with Jesus and understanding what has he called us to. Now, something that we're doing this week, it's our midweek, is something that we do once a month, and we have a time to even dive deeper into worship and come together on Wednesday. So every midweek this entire summer, we've been doing something before midweek, which is something outside in the back lawn where you can come out, bring your picnic chairs and your picnic and eat. We'll have ice cream here for you and some games and things for you to engage in as a family, but we want to invite you to bring your entire family out to join us this week for midweek as we hang out back in the back and then come in here for our service together. Now, another thing that we have going on in our community that will be happening at the end of the month is we'll be doing a Mount Clemens community celebration. And this is something new that we want to do to partner with the neighborhood around and share the love of Jesus. So this is going to be a free family event that we'll do in downtown Mount Clemens, where we'll have people come and hang out. We'll have a backpack giveaway as kids are starting to go back to school. We'll have free food, live music, some bands coming in, and then also some games and bounce houses for kids to come and engage as well. But we can't do this without your help. We're looking for people that are willing to grill or willing to man some of the game stations or whatnot. So we want to meet you out in the lobby. If you want more information and think that you have the time to pour into this event, we definitely need you, and we would love to meet you directly after service to talk more about that. Now, there is an area out in the lobby called the Hub, and this area is not just for new people, which if you are new, we would love to meet you out there and say hello and give you a gift and say thank you so much for joining us today. But if you have questions, whether it's questions about your faith or questions about the different events that are happening here or at large, or anything that you're interested in getting involved in, we want to meet you out there at the Hub to give you that information. There'll be people out there with orange shirts waiting to meet you and talk to you and just say hello. Now, every year we do something called an annual report, and this is a time for us to reflect on the past year and see all the things that God has been doing through us to impact the world. So we put together this video. Take a look at it.
When we think about this past year, I'm sure many of us feel like we've traveled way more than just once around the sun. Was it really just 365 days as usual? I'm not sure. But so much good has happened at Kensington in this year like no other, which is evidence of God's grace and his presence. God is moving, and it is so humbling to be a part of it. So let me ask you a question. What image comes to your mind when you think of a source of heat or energy? Maybe you're thinking of the sun, how its rays push back the darkness, or maybe even thinking about sound waves rushing out from a source. This is just a simple mental image of how God works right here at Kensington. At the center is God, and through us, his love and transforming power are radiating out to impact our church, our local communities, our nation, and even our world. God's power is limitless, and what he can do through a community of imperfect people who are passionate about the one is measureless. So let's celebrate together all he's done in our community this past year.
Last June, our Traverse City campus relaunched in-person services, and in July, we reopened the rest of our campuses with limited capacity. Being able to gather together in the same place was so memorable and energizing. Our online presence is also very important. Over the past year, our services have been viewed more than 219,000 times. At most campuses, students returned to K-Kids and student programs in November. But prior to that, our teams worked hard to provide ways to connect virtually and engage in creative ways. There were video lessons, carefully assembled monthly curriculum bags, over 3,500 total, and campuses hosted all kinds of connection events for families. We also encouraged over 1,000 families with free online faith in the family events, including Faith Habits in the Family, Coping with Anxiety and Stress with Dr. Jack Wilson, Raising Godly Girls, Raising Godly Boys, and no perfect parents, with Kensington co-founders Dave and Ann Wilson.
Over the past year, we supported marriages in a variety of ways. 250 couples picked up a holiday date night kit. Over 400 people attended our online marriage course, and 174 marriage mentors personally encouraged other couples. With God at the center, radiating out His love, we can bravely step toward wholeness and community because we know it is God's nature to heal and redeem. Celebrate Recovery was the first ministry to return to in-person meetings last July. And before that, they held drive-by chip celebrations, recognizing each person's commitment to recovery and finding freedom through Jesus. At Kensington, we love celebrating baptisms. As people rise up out of the water, they are resurfacing with new life in Jesus. Last year, we held off-site baptisms in January and campus baptisms in May. Whether those 93 people were taking the plunge in a swim school or in front of a live congregation, this is an example of God at the center and change rippling out.
Best way to describe at least my decision to choose to be baptized is really boiled down to like the 3 C's for me is the celebration, the commitment, and the choice. So as much as I can appreciate it, it's certainly a public declaration. For me, at least, it was certainly a very, very personal declaration between me and God.
If you joined us for Good Friday and Easter this spring, you know that the creative elements and the beautiful teaching on the humanity of Jesus left a powerful impression. More than 8,200 of you joined us for in-person services, and over 12,000 of you joined us online. And there was a special original video created for our kids and watched by more than 800 families, which included an Easter explosion, a running pineapple, but most importantly, a lesson on the resurrection of Jesus.
Let's talk about how God's love radiated out beyond our walls to impact our local communities. We call this putting love into action, moving out. They cared for the homeless, delivered food boxes, sewed masks, and provided meals for frontline workers. Wrote notes of encouragement to teachers and staff, planted community gardens, provided learning resources to students, visited the elderly, tutored students, refurbished cars, and so much more. School partners amped up their back-to-school supply drive to help resource students for remote learning. Clinton Township partnered with Forgotten Harvest to launch a weekly mobile food pantry. Brazil campus launched their first move-out team, the Tabitha Project, to love and serve those in need. Traverse City launched 6 new move-out teams, serving the under-resourced, mentoring students, and supporting foster families. We understand that holidays are hard for many people, especially during a pandemic. We're so grateful for the resources and volunteers which allowed us to put together and deliver 1,500 Thanksgiving baskets to local families from our partner schools. Again, at Christmas, we asked ourselves how best to serve our neighbors, and that was through you, directly, the people in our seats. During services, we invited you to receive a $25 Meijer gift card or give it to someone in need. People responded wildly to this, often sharing the cards with others. And we gave away cards totaling over $21,000, which impacted over 600 families.
With God at the center, as a never-ending, never-drying-up source, we don't have to ration out our resources. Instead, we turn with open hearts and hands toward the spiritual or physical needs within our state and nation. We're dedicated to planting new churches all over the country. To date, we have planted 97 churches nationally. And many of these churches have gone on to plant more churches, which means hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. have heard about the hope and love of Jesus. This year, we've been working with 7 new churches, all at different stages in the launching process. Imagine a major flood in the middle of this pandemic. When we offered a way to help Midland, you all jumped at the chance to bring hope to a devastating situation. We partnered with one of our move-out teams, DRAW, Disaster Relief at Work, to provide essential supplies for immediate and long-term recovery efforts. During one Sunday morning in February, we shared that hundreds of thousands in Texas were without power and millions without water. And once again, partnering with our move-out team, DRAW, you immediately responded by donating over $20,000. Funding more than half of the delivery and distribution of 4,600 cases of water to Houston, Dallas, and Tyler.
At Kensington, we believe that we are called to show the love of God by meeting needs in His name around the globe. With God as the source, we reach out to build relationships and share resources with global partners in 10 different countries.
Over the past year, we as a community have been supporting these on-the-ground leaders in 2 different ways. We help sustain them and the work they do in their local communities, and we stepped in when an emergency struck to equip them.
When India experienced a second dangerous wave of COVID, our partner's private hospital was converted into an emergency COVID site at the request of the Indian government.
I'm standing in front of the CM hospital, which is being used as COVID Grade A hospital. And many lives are being saved in this pandemic situation of second wave of COVID-19. And many people are witnessing God's healing.
We shared their need for beds, equipment, and supplies. And this open-handed community gave $200,000 to support them as they saved lives.
Our partner Reuben in South Sudan shared that by God's grace, good things were still happening among the tribe he's working with. 40 churches were planted, 523 people became followers of Jesus, and 55 people were baptized.
Last year in Afghanistan, where law prohibits converting to Christianity, our partner distributed more than 120,000 Bibles.
The Hope Water Project team showed some creativity in order to support its mission to bring clean water to the Pokot tribe of Western Kenya. When we weren't able to hold our traditional fundraising events, there was an out-of-the-box virtual challenge called Every Mile Counts. People could walk, run, cycle, hold a movie marathon, or anything to raise money to dig clean water wells. And guess what? This community raised just over $170,000, which will dig 6 wells in Kenya. Literally thousands of lives will be changed. Education will be possible, churches can be built, herds can remain healthy, and these villages can thrive.
One of the highlights of this year has been the church planting initiative of our newest global partner. We recently shared our goal of planting 1,000 churches in northern India, which is a predominantly Hindu region. Our partnership with the Timothy Initiative will allow us to launch new churches for just $300 each. In just a few months' time, you have given over $200,000, which is 75% of the way to our goal.
Only answer to reach these places is disciple makers who plant churches. And this is the only way that we can reach this huge number of villages.
Wow. It is so incredible to hear about what God has done here and around the world through Kensington over the past year. Each one of you is an integral part of who we are and how we're blessing others in Jesus' name. You've probably heard it said before that the church is not the building, and let's be the church the other 6 days of the week. And when you really listen to these 2 phrases, you hear how beautiful they are and how they reflect the heart of God. And it reflects you. You've been that church. Thank you for giving your time and your financial gifts and your talents to make an impact on the lives of others. And in all of this, God's at the center. He's the source, and our privilege is to radiate out His love and light to the farthest, most reaches of the earth. And I do want to finish with a challenge for all of us, really 2 challenges. If this past year and what you've experienced has disconnected you from this community, I just urge you to please take steps to reconnect. We are better together. We need each other. Come back to an in-person service. Reach out to that friend or small group. Open yourself up again. And if you're here and connected, my challenge for you and me is this: let's continue. Let's keep pressing into the difficulties that life brings us, that we're all experiencing. And I would say maybe most of all, let's keep our hearts soft to Jesus and to each other and to those in need. And keep our hands in a posture of open-handedness. That's always been our dream. And I just want to finish by saying a huge thanks to all of you. I cannot thank God enough for you, and I can't wait to see how God will work through us this coming year.
Man, I think it's extremely exciting to see all the things that God is doing through us throughout the world. Personally, for me, I'm a numbers guy, so watching that video really helps me personally to be able to see the numerical impact that we're able to have throughout the world as well. But I want to partner with Steve and just say thank you to every single person that's given time, energy, or financial resources. We know that this would not have been possible without you partnering with us to be the hands and feet of Jesus throughout the world. So thank you so much. In 2 weeks, we're going to be having our annual vote. So if you are a member here at Kensington, we would just want to encourage you to be here on August 29th to be a part of that. But before we move any further in our service, I want to invite you all to stand and say hello to the people around you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenna, and this next song is a song that I wrote, and it's called Voyage. And it's just about how life is less about the final destination and more about the journey and the process and just being intentional with every step. Every step I take, every single moment leads me closer to the final destination. There is beauty to take in. I'm here for the voyage, not for the landing. Though the winds keep changing, your sails are withstanding. So I'm here for the journey. Where you are is where I want to be. On the waves we are dancing, horizons expanding. Everywhere I look, I'm in awe of all the beautiful things that you have created, just so I could get a glimpse of the glory you behold. I'm here for the voyage, not for the landing. Though the winds keep changing, the sails are standing. So I'm here for the journey. Where you are is where I want to be. On the waves we are dancing, horizons expanding. So take me across the oceans wide, even when I can't see the other side. I'm ready to go wherever you wanna go. Where you lead, I will follow. 'Cause I know as far as east is from the west, your love will carry me. I'm here for the voyage, not for the landing. Though the winds keep changing, your sails are standing. So I'm here for the journey. Where you are is where I want to be. On the waves we are dancing, horizons expanding.
Jenna, come back. So you just graduated from high school, right?
Yeah.
So what are you doing this fall?
I'm going to Rochester University.
Okay. Are you going to be doing Kaleo? I wanted to ask you. Are you doing Kaleo, helping out with Kaleo this fall too?
Yep.
Okay. So just tell us a little bit about how you came to write that song.
So Aaron Jones actually gave me a piece of encouragement that inspired this song, and he said, you know, as you graduate college, just know that life is less about the final destination and more about the journey and just taking in the beauty of every step along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's being faith, being a step at a time.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. 47 years ago, I graduated from high school. I know it doesn't look like that. It looks like 20 years ago. But the day after you've heard me tell this, but I got on the plane to go to California to fight forest fires for the U.S. government for the summer, and then I was going away to college, and that was when I heard, reading Matthew 19, everyone who's left houses and land, sister and father, mother or brothers, for my sake, will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. And I felt like that was where God said, you're never going home again. Memphis is not going to be your home again. And home is going to be with me, like in that journey. Anyway, so as I was listening to this song you wrote, honestly, if I'd have had one creative bone in my body 47 years ago, the song you wrote is the song that I think I would have sung back then, because I was stepping out. I didn't know where the journey was taking me. I was going to follow Jesus along the way. So thanks for writing that. Thanks for we're not that different. Pretty awesome. Okay. Isn't it fun how the Lord has surrounded us with amazing people everywhere you turn? That's what I love. I love about being alive, and Jenna is certainly a great example of that. And I don't know how you can get that, but somehow we need to figure out how to get that in the hands of people. That is really perfectly describes Gideon, the first part of the first 2 weeks of this series, where Gideon is learning to trust God. He goes from being scared in the wine press to stepping out and fighting an army that, by the way, outnumbered. Gideon starts with 20,000 soldiers. God tells him to whittle it down to 300. Those 300 men that are going to battle the Midianites are outnumbered at least 400 to 1. Can you imagine going into a battle where you're outnumbered 400 to 1? Not even the Wheaton College football team could have handled those odds. Not funny, okay? Yeah. You guys don't know what Wheaton College football is, do you? No, you shouldn't, because we were terrible. When I first began to read the Bible, I love the stories of faith. I love Gideon. This story, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you today, but it's just an incredible step of faith. But I was mystified when I began to read the Bible on my own of how flawed all the characters in the Bible are. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, isn't it cool that they're flawed? Because you know what that means for us? We can identify. We're invited into this. We're just as flawed as they are. And Gideon is a great example where he started really poorly. He finally got started. He had enough courage to follow God, to do what Jenna said. And so he said, like Jenna said in the song, take me to the oceans wide. Even when I can't see the other side, I'm ready to go wherever you want to go. Where you lead, I will follow. He does say that, but it takes him time to get there. But then when you read the Bible, it is discouraging of how many of your favorite characters crash and burn. They don't finish well. I was thinking about this 3 weeks ago. It's funny how life goes. I finished the David and Bathsheba message here. I think that's the one I did here. Different campuses, but I remember being here the last Sunday in July, and after it was a great morning hanging out with you guys, and then I was driving home, and my brand new 2008 Honda Odyssey van literally went 1 second from running to not running right before I got to Card Road, just 2 miles. And I was able to pull into a mobile home subdivision, but the car died with half of my butt of my car sticking in the Hall Road. And so I'm sitting there in the car, and it's a little bit of a rise up, so I slam it into drive to keep it from drifting back into the road. And of course, people are just blessing me every 30 seconds. You're in the way. You're butting yeah, you think I don't know? No, I just thought this would be a great place to park for Sunday afternoon after church. So it's so fun how in those situations, the most unlikely people stop and help, and some guys tried to get out and push me, but I couldn't. The car was so locked up, I couldn't get it into drive or neutral to push it. So we gave up. I sat there for another 45 minutes. Finally, I was able to just hammer it out, and a couple of guys jumped out and pushed me out of the road, which was an incredible relief. And I really appreciate all of those of you who honked at me that are at this church. on Sunday afternoon 3 weeks ago. Remember kind of a gold van? Yeah, thanks a lot. Anyway, I called AAA, and I'm not kidding you. They say, yeah, somebody will come. It's going to take a couple hours. I tell Paula, she says, "Shut, come get you. I'll be all right." And finally, 3 hours, no one's called. I've called. There's nobody coming. And I finally said, "Paula, would you just come pick me up and take me someplace because I got to pee so bad." I got to somewhere. Take me to a restaurant or something. Take me to Starbucks. So I finally call a private towing group. I ended up getting home that Sunday from here at 6:30 p.m. That's when I finally got home. But the point of that is I started really well out of the parking lot, but I didn't get too far. And I thought, it's just like life. That's how life happens to us along the way. So today, as we're looking at this, I just want to say Gideon is going to have a good moment here. And then there's going to these leaks come in, and I really want to talk about these leaks. Before we do that, I want to receive our offering. I want to thank you for another incredible, unbelievable year. These are the ways to give. Some of you have been kicking the tires, thinking about joining us. And some of you even watching on live stream, you're still not comfortable to come in, but you've been so faithful to continue to give and partner. It's really pretty special. The only thing I just remind you of, if you're under 40, you can give by text in less than 10 seconds. If you're over 40, it takes about 90 seconds. Okay? We've proven that scientifically. But thank you for partnering. And amazing, just looking at that video, I'm like, oh my goodness. If even one of those things would have happened, it would have been worth our lives together. It's truly marvelous. So that's as we step into this today, I want to teach you two principles, and I want to be quick with the first one. The first principle is this: when you start strong, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a step of faith. Jesus said in Matthew 17, and this would apply to Gideon in this story. He says, because you have so little faith, Jesus is talking to his disciples, which by virtue of the reality of our life, he's talking to us. You have so little faith. This could have been titled, Steve Andrews, because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Now listen, some of you have been to Israel with me, some of you will go with me again someday, Lord willing. We'll have things will open up a little bit more, and even next year. But it is so cool to go to a mustard plant and peel off a little pod and open them up. And they're the teeniest, tiniest little seeds. Jesus says that's all it takes. And you know what I call a mustard seed prayer? This is the kind of prayer I pray. I'm like, Lord, I'm completely doubting. I doubt that this prayer is going to have any effect, but I'm going to pray it anyway because you asked me to pray it, and I don't think anything's going to happen, but I'm going to give it out to you anyway. That's a mustard seed prayer. And you know what? I think God loves that kind of prayer. Now, some people, I know there are people on TV and public figures are like, we're going to pray and we're going to believe and we're like, ah. I was just say, good on them. Good for them. That just has never been the reality of my life. My prayer is just like, and you know what? God loves that prayer too. He's okay with that because it's not the size of your faith, it's the object of your faith that matters. And so here's the first thing. I want you to take a screenshot of this. I want you to talk about this afternoon at lunch or with friends or whatever. There's a lot of hope in the reality that only a little faith can create massive change. This is true in every area of life. Take a screenshot. Let me see how many of you are doing it, okay? 4 of you. Wonderful. Tremendous. Thank you. No, seriously, you want to think about this. What are the small steps you could take in your life that could totally transform your life? I hear stories about it all the time. Small acts of kindness, little steps that you make along the way. Like I think about my first day in seminary, sitting down next to this big African guy from Kenya and realizing he was a Pokot tribesman. I'd prayed for him my whole life. I saw him with his huge afro in the front, and I thought, that's the guy I'm going to sit next to. That decision changed my life and changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Despite my unfaithfulness, by the way, if you know that story, because I blew the story for so many years. But small steps. Now, just to prove that, let me say, if I had $1 million check to give you right now, and I'm saying, here, take it, cash it. Tomorrow, banks are closed right now. They probably won't take a virtual $1 million check, but you probably have to go into the bank. But it's legit. Or I could give you a penny, and I'll double it every day for 30 days. What are you going to take? You got 5 seconds to decide. 5, 4. You're going to what? You're going to take the check. Oh, man, you blew it. You blew it. So the check, you get $1 million. If I gave you a penny and I doubled it every day for 30 days, do you know after 8 days how much that money would be worth? Over $1. After 15 days, you know how much it'd be worth? About $100. Do you know what it'd be worth after 30 days? $5,368,000. If I gave you a penny and I doubled the number every day. Isn't that incredible? Think about it. You could have been worth $5 million. Now you're just worth a measly $1 million. But that's what it means to start small. So this is what happened to Gideon. He at first had 20,000 soldiers show up to fight for him against the 100. We know there was at least 120,000 of the enemy, of the Midianites and the Amalekites and the Eastern Army. It might have been as many as 200,000. God tells Gideon to whittle this army down. You can read about it. It's a great story. It gets down to 300. Not the Spartans. This is not the Spartan story. This is Gideon's story. 300, outnumbered 400 to 1, maybe more. And Gideon is terrified. He's not, remember God called him mighty warrior? He didn't feel like a mighty warrior. He's still scared. So I don't have time to read all this to you, but in Judges 7, God says to Gideon, if you're afraid, I want you to sneak into the enemy camp in the dark, and I'm going to show you something. So he takes one of his servants, and he sneaks into the camp, and he overhears these two guys talking in the middle of the night. And one guy says, man, I had a dream. Had this roll of barley bread fly into our camp and just started knocking everything loose in our camp. And the other guy goes, oh, man, I tell you what that is. That's Gideon. The sword of the Lord is coming. It's like 300 guys against 120,000. That is pathetic. But you know what happens to Gideon? It's just amazing. Gideon goes back after he hears the dream. It says in verse 15, he bowed down and worshiped. And then after that, he divides the men into companies. I'm going to read this. Verse 16, he placed trumpets in empty jars and says, this is the great part. Verse 17, he goes, watch me, follow my lead. And when I get to the edge of camp, do exactly as I do. Like, you see the transformation? Here's a guy hiding, threshing wheat. I'm the most pitiful guy in my family. I'm a worthless piece of garbage. And the next thing we know, he's going, follow me. Like, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, he's just totally believing that God's going to give him this victory. Small steps of faith can lead to massive change. And so it says in verse 19, when Gideon and the men reached the edge of the camp, they blew their trumpets, broke the jars. It says the three companies, verse 20, blew the trumpet, smashed the jars, and grasping the torches and holding in their right hands, they shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. That's what he told them to yell. And verse 21 says, while each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. This is the only account we have in history of 300 people who all they did was blow a trumpet, break a torch, break a jar, hold a torch in the air, 300 people, and 120,000 mighty, powerful army was put to rout like that. Because Gideon took a step of faith with God. God showed up. It wasn't Gideon. He should have had, I wish he hadn't said that. That was probably a mistake. He should have said, but he thought, well, they're afraid of Gideon, so we're going to shout Gideon's name. But a sword for the Lord. So that part is incredible. So here's what you think. You think, oh yeah. So as a result of this, Gideon's going to trust God for the rest of his life. How many of you have had God do something cool in your life and you go, I'm going to trust God for the rest of my life and I'm never going to waver 1 inch for the rest of my life? Who said that in this room? Raise your hands, you bunch of liars. Of course you said that. It's like, Lord, if you come through, I'm good. I'm going to follow, and this is going to be great. And then 2 days later, you're like, I don't even believe in God. Man, I can't believe this. I'm gonna figure out my own way. We've all done that. And so does Gideon. You think Gideon sees this incredible miracle, and then he springs a leak. That's what we're going to talk about. And here's the second screenshot I want you to take, and I want you to talk about it, because this is really serious. It's a dumb little phrase, but it's absolutely true. A little leak can deflate an entire dream. It doesn't take a lot. I've watched people in Christian leadership my whole life crash and burn. And there are some of them that just did egregious stuff from the beginning. They were fakes from the beginning. They were stealing, hiding, whatever. But most of them weren't. Most of them were sincere. And they just started having little leaks along the way. Right now in your life, if you're a married person, talk with your spouse about the leaks in your marriage. Be honest. This is an important thing. You got stuff with your kids, think about what those leaks are. I'll give you a great example. Some of us have kids and we go, man, I'm going to create, I was just talking to Larry and Sally Moore, good friends that are here, and they're trying on a weekly basis to do creative things with each of their, I think they got 7 or 8 grandkids. They're trying to, like weekly, bi-weekly, do creative things with each of their grandkids, and they're doing it to build a relationship, share the love of Christ. I just love that. That's an intentional decision to do what? To pump air in the tires of your life, right? They're pumping into their kids. But it'd be easy to be busy in life, right? As parents or grandparents or friends, to not invest. You think, man, I've been thinking about calling my buddy. I know he's struggling, whatever. Call him. Check in with the people you love. You think about, I've been thinking about inviting my neighbors over to dinner for a barbecue this summer. Do it. Pump. Don't let the leaks. So often the leak is just not doing anything. I'll give you an example of that. August 28th, we're doing this cool thing, this campus. We're going into Mount Clemens, and we're just doing a day for the people. We're going to have games and bands, and we're giving away backpacks to kids, and it's going to be a really cool day. There's so many things that's going to pump up the community, and it's going to pump us up as we serve. But a lot of us go, yeah. And when you look back and your life's over, you can say, well, what was your life like? That's not the way to live. Step into action. Take a step of faith. You'd be amazed at what massive changes could come. But then the leaks come, and you got to battle the leaks. And that's what I want to focus on as we finish. The Israelites said to Gideon, rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you've saved us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon told them, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. That's a pretty good statement. But here's what I wish Gideon would have said. I wish Gideon had said, I didn't save us. I wish he would have said, it wasn't me, it was God. That could have maybe changed everything. Okay, that's just my side comment. So for us, as we do stuff together, and I would say it to anybody, if something great happens in your life, don't take credit for it. God's goodness lets us experience good things along the way. I have, it's so funny, with my kids and my grandkids, when great stuff happens, I might go, hey, yeah, well, that's my kid, my grand, Then something terrible happens, I'm like, yeah, I've never even seen them. Because it's all God's grace. God's working. And I would say, the joy is being along for the ride. And I just love, part of my motto is, I just think my whole life story is just being surrounded by great people. That's why I love coming here. You guys are a blast. Gideon says, I'm not going to rule. But the people make 2 mistakes, and I want you to think about these, because I think these are leaks. Get your phone ready, please. This time I want to see all of you doing it. And then you can go back to your video game. Just kidding. 2 mistakes we all make. Number 1, we put our faith in people over God. The people didn't want to trust God. The big problem that the people of Israel has, they didn't want to trust God, but they always wanted to trust a person. But a person is going to let you down. You know, I always tell the story about my dad and I were playing, my two brothers in Florida. We were on vacation. We were playing a golf match. I was the worst. Dad was the best. And so between the two of us, it was a pretty even battle with my two brothers. And we were like on the 17th hole, and my dad didn't have a shot. We were behind a little tree like this, and he didn't have a shot to the green. So he's just like, he moves the golf ball over like 2 feet, so he's got a shot. We end up winning the championship. Huge trophy. Just kidding, not a trophy. My brothers are furious. They're like, Dad, you're a cheater. He goes, listen, if you're counting on me to never let you down, you're going to be sorely disappointed. That's a good lesson. It's like, Dad, that's a good lesson. You're still a cheater. The second mistake we make is we resist God's loving control over our lives. We think we got it. Instead of saying yes to God, when we make that small step and we see God's faithful, we're like, cool, I got through the crisis, now it's back to me living my life. Man, I've seen that at every turn. And so, those are the mistakes they made. Here's the mistake that Gideon makes. He says, I do have one request, though. That each of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder. It was a custom of the Ishmaelites to wear gold earrings. So as they were battling this, they had probably captured thousands and thousands of these. They said, we'll be glad to give them. So they spread out a garment, because they'd all gotten plunder from the battle. And each of them threw a ring from his plunder onto it. And the weight of the gold rings, he asked, came to 1,700 shekels. Not counting the ornaments, the pendants, the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains that were on their camels' necks. So Gideon was making out like gangbusters anyway. He's the victor, and he had got a lot of the spoils. But the earrings alone came to 43 pounds of gold. How about $1 million or 43 pounds? I don't know. What is 43? I don't know. It's ridiculous. Somebody kicked me off the stage. Too random. So Gideon made the gold into an ephod, which he placed in Ophrah, his town, and all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there. In other words, it became a snare to Gideon and his family. So an ephod was a beautiful garment. And this garment was something that, like, you would hang on something. You might, a priest might wear it for a minute, but imagine a garment just like weighted down with pounds of gold and chains and, and valuable, And so what happens is the people like worship the object. It'd be like if you go with me to Israel and you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and you say, boy, we think this is the stones that were under where Jesus hung on the cross, and Jesus, and his blood dropped on these stones, and people just go crazy. Like, oh, and they weep. And I'm not criticizing that, but there's part of me that wants to say, hey, I want to tell you something. Jesus, even if this is true, he's risen. And he wants to dwell in you by his Holy Spirit. And he loves you. And he was with you long before you got to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And he's going to be with you long after you leave. That you have the living God living with you. Jesus said through the psalmist and through the writer of Hebrews, I'll never leave you, never forsake you. Don't worship the object. Now, if the object draws you to really love Jesus, that's great. But so often, it's the object that gets us. So here are Gideon's mistakes. First mistake, I think, is he took a reward. He took a reward. I want to say, if you serve with us here, some people are like, I'm going to serve for all the praise and thanks. No, don't do it. Do it if you're called. We're going to kick off this fall again after COVID, going to restart. Man, we need people to jump in like crazy. And the whole world needs that. You see it everywhere. But I'm saying, don't do it because you have to. Do it because you get to do it. Do it because of the joy of doing it. Don't call a friend and say, well, I called you, therefore I expect you to call me and love. No, just do it. Don't do it for the reward. Do it. The work itself is the reward. I'm able to structure my life where I drive my grandkids a lot, all the time. They're going to put it on my tombstone. He drove us a lot. And I love it. I don't need any reward. You know what the reward is? The reward is getting to get them every day. And they're just goofy and quirky as all get out. But they're who God's called me to. So don't do it for the reward. I wish Gideon hadn't taken the reward. So he's like, nah, don't. Listen, God was faithful. We were all a part of it. Let's enjoy it together. Let's enjoy the faithfulness of God. That would be so much better. The second mistake he made is he redirected people from God's deliverance to an object. So this ephod, this incredible garment, is placed there. People go like, hey, this is the garment made out of the great victory that Gideon won for us. When Gideon said, I didn't win this. I was the cowardly lion, and God worked in me anyway. So here's where we finish up. Small leaks. This little earring, one earring each, doesn't sound like a lot, and it's like a penny doubled every day. Just, you're going to think about this. You could have had $5,368,000. So funny. But small leaks lead to often the greatest disasters. When you think about it, how small Gideon's request was. So here's what I was thinking for us today. I made a list of my leaks that are happening within me, things I find myself thinking and doing. And I think you'll relate to them as well. And I'd like for you to take a screenshot. Take a screenshot because it's going to be hard to read. But if you take this, you can go. I'm begging you to take a screenshot and go home and talk to each other about this. But here's some of the potential leaks. Number one is entitlement. I worked so hard, I deserve this. I think, man, in our places of work, Mom, you worked hard. You deserve that, baby. Right? And that baby's never going to know how hard you worked for, right? How much you sacrificed. Doesn't matter. The reward is the calling and the work itself, right? So entitlement. I worked so hard, I deserve this. Comfort. This is what I see happening everywhere, where I'm going to make God fit into my plans. Like, I got great plans of what I want to do. I got my bucket list. So God's just going to fit in with me and my view of the world. Instead of saying, God, give me a new vision of what you see for the world. Let me move my life to what you want. It's a big difference. Excuses. Jesus is asking me to follow him, but I have reasons why I can't. That's going to happen August 28th. There's literally a bunch of you that are thinking, well, I could go and be a part of the Mount Clemens Day and hang out with other Kensington people, have a blast, serve the people of Mount Clemens, but you know, there's only a limited number of good weather Saturdays to play golf before fall hits. So, I mean, I could go to the Mount Clemens thing, but I'd miss a golf day. And it might be as simple as going, I'd really like to go, but man, I've tired. I had a big week. I'm gonna sit home and watch that Netflix series on Formula One that everybody's been telling me to watch. My daughter's trying to get me to watch it, by the way. You know, you make excuses. When mom and dad were asked to go in 1968 to go to Africa for a year, take over Mission Hospital, leave his medical practice behind. Remember, leave my brother behind. My mom and dad had more excuses than anybody I ever knew not to go. But they threw them away. Okay, back to the screen. Number 4. Pleasure. I love pursuing the feeling of happy more than I want to live a life of purpose and joy. If you choose the path that God has for you, a lot of it's going to be uncomfortable. He's going to invite you to step in uncomfortable situations. That's just part of it. Number 5. This is a big one. Self-destructive choices that are small, but I justify doing bad things because bad things were done to me or I was hurt. Like, you know, Paula and I had so many arguments we had through the years. And she'd go, well, you know, she'd do this, and so I do, you know, tit for tat, right? You did this, well, I'm going to do this. You know, well, I thought you did the wrong. Okay, well, then it just escalates. I know none of you have ever had that in your homes, escalation. Or you go, honey, you did that to me? That's cool. I'm just going to go privately and look at pornography. right? It's making self-destructive choices. Or I'm going to say, hey, I don't like all the, I can't stand the people that view politics differently from me. So I'm going to write them off. I can't, people that view the ethnic troubles that are all around the world or whatever, like, okay, just write them. I'm just going to cut those people out. I see people doing that in families and everywhere. You know what? I learned something really big like the last week. You know what? You ready for this? There's no screenshot for this. People don't agree. Isn't that amazing? And guess what? People aren't going to agree. So how do you live? Jesus says, love your enemies, right? Pray for people who persecute you. Like, open your hearts. That's what I said in the annual meeting video. Soften your heart to people. Softening your heart is a great choice. Hardening your heart and cutting people off, that's called a self-destructive choice. Being unforgiving is like drinking poison and hoping somebody else is going to die. But we're doing it. Okay, last one. Back to those. Self-destruct. What was the last one? Oh, enlightenment. I remember it. Oh, they're not going to throw it up. Like, you're out of time and Aaron's not throwing it up. Okay, Aaron Jones. You see this right here? It's going to cost you. Okay. So, the steps to stop the leaks are this. And this is what I would love for you to do practically. Oh, it's up. Okay. Okay, they're giving me a hard time. That's so funny. I'm still going to come back and speak in a couple of weeks. The great experiment of our time is we know better than God does. We have a better plan. The Bible's outdated. Jesus is nice but not relevant. That's it. That is a huge leak that's happening right now in the world, in the Western world. You know what? I don't want that leak. I believe Jesus is alive. I believe he's relevant. I believe he's powerful to save. I believe he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Okay, maybe I'm a fool. That's certainly possible, as you know. So here's the steps to stop the leaks, and then we'll wrap it up. Number one, identify the leak. Find the places where you're choosing not to follow God's plan for your life. And then two, and it sounds simple, but invite friends to help you to make those changes. Stephen Ministries that we have here are people that are trained to come alongside people as they're working through issues and pain and grief and struggles in their life. It's one of the best kept secrets at Kensington. If you are struggling, we've got people ready to sit down with you and just hear you out and walk this journey with you. And then number three, admit what's at stake if you don't address the leaks. By the way, if you identify the leak, but you don't share it with anybody else, you miss the power of accountability. And three, admit what's at stake if you don't address the leaks. You know, it's true right now in some of your marriages, you got leaks right now. There are places where you're flirting with danger. If you don't address the leaks, your marriage is going to get worse. And you're going to lose something that is infinitely precious. It's going to cost you, it's going to cost your kids, because you wouldn't look at the leak. And you wouldn't admit it to people. Find a trusted friend and start talking about it and get help. Finally, ask Jesus to help you experience his grace, even in the midst of the leaks and the blowouts. I love this one because here's what I know. We're all going to leak. We're all going to fail. But Jesus is not going to fail us. He's not going to abandon us. And when we stumble, we're going to turn our heart back to him. And I just love that image of his arms being open wide. You know, my grandkids are all young now that every time I see them, they come running to me. It's the best moment in life, isn't it? I remember my kids would come running to me. And then I remember my kids didn't want to give me the time of day. I remember one of my daughters, she was so withdrawn from me that I went years without hugging her. But she would let me pat her on the shoulder as I'd walk by. She'd doing her homework. I'd walk by and I'd just pat her on the shoulder. Man, that was hard. That was a grievous time. Didn't matter. That pat was like, I love you with all the love I can muster. I still love you. I'm going to pat your shoulder. That's all I get to do. And someday, guess what? My grandkids aren't going to come. They're not going to run to greet me. Their loss. But it's not going to change my face. It's not going to change my open arms. Whether you're running or not to the Lord Jesus Christ, he's still doing this to all of us. And he's saying, come in me. This is the place of refuge. This is the place of purpose, place of safety. Isn't that great? Lord, thank you for speaking to us. Thank you. I just love being with this incredible team of people. Lord, lead us to fix the leaks and let us be an encouragement to each other along the way. I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Slow down, take time, breathe in. He said he'd reveal what's to come. The thoughts in his mind always higher than mine. He'd reveal all to come. So take courage, my heart. Stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. No. Sing praise, my soul. Find strength in joy. Let his words lead you on. And do not forget his great faithfulness. Finish all he's begun. So take courage, my heart. Stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. And hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. No, he's never failing.